Have you ever been told to just be nice? That being kind, agreeable, and selfless is the highest virtue you can aim for. That if you're always nice to others, the world will somehow reward you. Well, what if I told you that this belief, this deep-rooted, almost sacred idea of being nice is not only flawed, but might actually be making you weaker? Pause for a moment. What if the very thing you were taught to admire in yourself was the source of your limitation? This is the paradox of being nice, how it's actually making you weak. I want you to imagine someone you know who's always there for others, always smiling, always saying yes. They never argue, never disagree, never push back. At first you might say, "Wow, what a great person." But over time, don't you begin to feel something else? A kind of quiet frustration, a subtle lack of respect? Why? Because deep down we all know something that's difficult to admit. Niceness without strength is not virtue, it's compliance. In the next few minutes, we're going to take a dive into one of the most misunderstood traits in modern life. We're going to explore how being nice is often a mask, one that covers fear, self-doubt, and a lack of boundaries. And we'll see how the world doesn't actually reward nice people, it uses them. But let's be clear, this is not an argument for being cruel, or selfish, or indifferent. No, this is about understanding the difference between true kindness and weak niceness.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Because only one of them leads to real strength, respect, and authenticity. So here's a question to kick things off. Are you truly being kind or just trying to be liked? That question alone can shatter the illusion. When we're young, we're trained to believe that being nice means being good. It starts in school: don't cause trouble, don't challenge authority, don't say anything that might make someone uncomfortable. Just smile. Be agreeable. Be nice. But niceness, in this context, is not a moral virtue. It's a survival strategy. It's how we learn to navigate systems of power without being punished. But as we grow older, we carry that habit into adulthood, and it slowly begins to eat away at who we really are. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone in a relationship. They always say yes. They never complain. They always put the other person's needs first. And at first, they're praised for it. "Wow, you're so thoughtful." But over time, two things happen. First, they lose themselves. They start to forget what they want, what they enjoy, what they need. And second, the other person begins to take them for granted. Why? Because they've trained the world to expect self-erasure. And here's the brutal truth. If you teach people that your needs don't matter, they will believe you. So why do we do this? Because we confuse being liked with being safe. Because we fear rejection. Because we're taught that conflict is dangerous and boundaries are rude. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if real strength comes not from being liked, but from being known? What if the people who respect you the most are not the ones you please, but the ones who see your truth and still choose to stay? I want you to sit with that. Niceness, when used as a shield, becomes a form of self-betrayal. And the more we betray ourselves, the more hollow we become. We start to feel resentment. We begin to feel invisible. We wonder why no one understands us when in truth, we never showed them who we are. Now let's go deeper. Have you ever noticed how the most respected figures in history, philosophers, leaders, artists, were not known for being nice? They were known for being honest, for being real, for having the courage to say things that upset people, challenge norms, and provoke thought. Socrates was not nice. Neither was Nietzsche. Nor was Jesus, if you really read what he said. These were not polite, agreeable men. They were disruptors of comfort. They were truth-tellers. So let me ask you again, what if your obsession with being nice is actually preventing you from being good? Think about that. Goodness requires integrity. Integrity requires truth. And truth often offends. Niceness, on the other hand, avoids offense at all costs, even if it means lying, hiding, or staying silent in the face of injustice. So tell me, which is more moral? Now, this doesn't mean we should become cruel. But it does mean we need to redefine what it means to be kind. Because real kindness is not about making people feel good. It's about caring enough to tell the truth. It's about standing firm in your values, even when others disapprove. And here's where the paradox sharpens. The more you try to be nice to everyone, the more you abandon yourself. But the more you honor yourself, the more you become truly valuable to others. Because people don't need another people pleaser, they need someone who's real. Let's take this into practical life. In your career, if you're always the agreeable one, the one who never says no, who always volunteers, who never sets boundaries, you might think you're being a team player. But what's really happening? You're training your colleagues to see you as a utility, not a leader. You're signaling that your time is less valuable. And over time, you'll burn out and they won't even notice. Why? Because you were never really there. You were a mask, a nice projection without depth. It's the same in friendships. If you never challenge your friends, if you always just go along with whatever they want, you're not building authentic connection. You're building dependence, and dependence is not respect. So here's a brutal but freeing truth. You will be disliked. You will be misunderstood. You will disappoint people. But if you do it in service of your truth, your values, and your integrity, then you are not failing. You are growing. And here's where I'm going to hit you with the hardest question yet. Who are you when you're not trying to be liked? That question terrifies people. Because most of us have built our entire personalities around being liked, around being safe, around not rocking the boat. But what if your deepest power lies in the exact opposite? What if the boat needs to be rocked? What if your life is not meant to be a smooth ride, but a bold, turbulent journey toward truth? I've seen it over and over again. The moment someone stops trying to be nice and starts trying to be real, everything changes. Their posture changes. Their energy changes. People respect them more. They attract deeper relationships, better opportunities, and more meaningful lives. Because authenticity has gravity. It pulls the right people in and pushes the wrong ones out. This isn't about being rude. It's about being clear. And clarity is love. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say, no, or I disagree, or this is not okay. That's not mean. That's mature. So here's your challenge. Start noticing where you're being nice instead of being honest. Notice where you shrink to avoid tension, where you say yes when you mean no, where you smile when you're actually hurting. And ask yourself, what would happen if I told the truth here? Not the brutal truth, not the weaponized truth, but the vulnerable, courageous truth, because that's where real power lives, not in being liked, but in being known. And once you're known, truly known, you become undeniable. We're just getting started. Because let me ask you something. How many times have you agreed to something that made you feel smaller? Not just inconvenienced, but genuinely smaller, less alive. Like a piece of you had to go dormant just to keep the peace, avoid conflict, or maintain an illusion of harmony. And over time, how many versions of yourself have you buried under the weight of that smile? This is what I call self-erasure, the slow, almost invisible process of deleting who you are, one yes at a time. You don't notice it at first. It starts small. You say yes to a plan you don't want. You allow someone to speak over you. You let a joke slide that actually hurt. You take on a responsibility that clearly isn't yours. And each time you tell yourself, it's fine. It's nothing. I'm just being nice, but it's not nothing. It's a small funeral for your truth. And here's the terrifying part. The world is perfectly happy to attend those funerals with you. It won't stop you. In fact, it will reward you for disappearing, because when you erase yourself, you make others more comfortable. But comfort is not the same as connection. And approval is not the same as love. So let me ask you again, more directly this time, how much of your life is made up of things you never really chose? That question alone can crack a life wide open. Because we all have a deep need to belong, to be accepted, to avoid rejection. But if we're not careful, that need becomes a kind of internal dictator, one that trades authenticity for acceptance. And that trade seems small until you realize it's cost you your identity. I want to give you a metaphor here. Imagine your inner self is a house. Every time you say yes to something that violates your truth, it's like giving away a room in that house. You say yes to please your partner, there goes the kitchen. You say yes to your boss who overworks you, there goes the bedroom. You say yes to toxic family patterns, say goodbye to the living room. Eventually, you're left standing in the hallway of your own soul, wondering why you feel so lost. And here's the kicker. You did it to yourself by trying to be the good one, the nice one, the accommodating one. But here's the truth most people never say out loud. You don't owe anyone your self-erasure. Not your parents, not your partner, not your friends, not your community. The world will constantly ask you to shrink to make it feel bigger, but you don't have to comply. Let that land. Now you may be asking, but isn't selflessness a virtue? Aren't we supposed to give to others? Yes, but not without a self. You cannot give what you do not have. And if you're constantly giving out of obligation, fear, or guilt, what you're offering isn't love. It's performance. True service, true generosity comes from overflow, not depletion. And overflow only happens when your inner well is full, when your needs are met, when your truth is honored, This is why saying no is not selfish, it's sacred. It's the way you protect the vessel of your being. So let's shift now from philosophy to practice. Start noticing your yeses. Every time you say yes, pause and ask, am I saying yes out of joy or fear? Does this yes honor me or erase me? What part of me has to disappear to make this yes possible? And then do something radical. Say no. Start small. Say no to something low stakes. Watch how uncomfortable it feels. Notice the guilt rise. Notice that voice in your head that says, you're being mean, or they're going to think you're selfish. And then watch what happens. Because here's the paradox. The world may resist your boundaries at first, but over time, it will respect them. And more importantly, you will respect them. Your inner compass will sharpen. Your energy will return. Your clarity will increase. Because each no is a yes to yourself. Now let's go deeper still. Why does this matter so much? Why is self-erasure so dangerous beyond just burnout? Because when you repeatedly abandon yourself, you stop trusting yourself. You start to doubt your instincts. You silence your inner voice, and eventually you lose the ability to know what you even want. This is not just inconvenient. This is existential. Because without that inner compass, you drift. You become a mirror for other people's expectations. You live a life that looks good on paper, but feels hollow. And one day you wake up and realize you've been living someone else's life. This is why so many nice people struggle with anxiety, depression, and resentment. Not because they are weak, but because they have built their identity on a foundation that cannot bear the weight of truth. Niceness is not stable. It requires constant maintenance, constant approval, and constant avoidance of conflict. But truth is a rock. It doesn't move when people get upset. It doesn't crumble when someone disapproves. It remains. And that's what we're after here, not just survival, but sovereignty. Not just being liked, but being whole. So here's another question, and I want you to really take your time with this. If you stop trying to be nice, what would your life look like? Would you leave that job? End that relationship? Set a boundary with your family? Would you finally pursue that dream you've been hiding behind politeness? This is not fantasy. This is the beginning of your liberation. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. People will push back. Some may even leave. But let them. Because the people who only love you when you're convenient are not your people. Your people are the ones who love your truth, who can handle your no, who don't need you to shrink in order to feel secure. And when you start living from that place, from truth, instead of niceness, you'll find something extraordinary. Your life expands. You attract better relationships. You feel more energy. You make clearer decisions. You stop second-guessing every word. You stop apologizing for existing. Because you're no longer outsourcing your worth to the approval of others. You've come home to yourself. So let me leave you with one final story in this part. There was a woman I worked with who was the definition of nice. She was loved by everyone, always helpful, always smiling. But inside, she was dying. She felt invisible. She had become a ghost in her own life. And one day, after years of saying yes, she decided to say no. No to a promotion she didn't want. No to a relationship that drained her. No to a family dynamic that demanded her silence. And at first, it was chaos. People were shocked. Some were angry. Some left. But something else happened too. She came alive. Her voice came back. Her energy returned. She started writing again, laughing again, giving again. And that's when she said something I'll never forget. I thought being nice was the key to love. But it turns out, being me was the key. That's the truth I want you to remember. Your niceness is not your power. Your truth is. And the world doesn't need more polite ghosts. It needs you. All of you. Even your no. Especially your no. This is where everything changes. If you followed this journey so far, you've already begun to see the illusion of niceness for what it really is, a socially approved form of self-erasure. A mask that lets you blend in while your real self fades away. But in this final part, we take the step from awareness to transformation. Because niceness isn't just something we do, it's a system we participate in. And the only way out is through boundaries. But not just any boundaries. Sacred boundaries. Boundaries that are rooted not in fear, not in guilt, not in retaliation, but in reverence for your own existence. Let me ask you something that might stop you cold. What if your yes means nothing because your no means nothing? Think about that. If you say yes to everything, what is your yes really worth? If your time, your energy, your presence is constantly available, what value does it carry? Scarcity isn't always bad. In fact, it creates meaning. Diamonds are valued because they are rare. Your deepest truths, your attention, your soul, these are your diamonds. And when you give them away freely, out of habit or fear, they lose their brilliance. But when you guard them with care, when you only say yes to what aligns, what matters, what uplifts, then your yes becomes a gift. And that gift becomes powerful. So here's the question that defines this entire part. What would it mean to treat your boundaries as sacred? Not as walls to keep people out, but as rituals that honor your inner world. Let's break it down. A sacred boundary is different from a defensive one. A defensive boundary says, "Stay away from me." A sacred one says, "This is how I honor my energy, so I can give from a place of fullness." It's the difference between fear and love. And when your boundaries are rooted in love for yourself, they become magnetic. They draw in people who respect you. They repel people who only want to use you. Because here's the truth that most nice people never realize until it's too late. If you don't set your boundaries, someone else will set them for you. And their version of your boundaries will always benefit them, not you. Look around. Every manipulative dynamic, every toxic relationship, every exploitative job, it exists because someone failed to draw a sacred line. And I say this with deep compassion because I've been there. Most of us have. We didn't know we had the right to say no. We thought love meant sacrifice. We thought being a good person meant being available all the time. We were taught that boundaries rejection. But boundaries are not rejection. They are clarity. And clarity is one of the highest forms of love. Imagine walking into a room where everyone knows where they stand. where no one is manipulating, guessing, overreaching. That's the world boundaries create. A world where you can be fully seen without being used, fully present without being drained. But to get there, you have to be willing to disappoint people. And that's where most nice people stumble. Disappointment is the great fear of the nice personality. We fear it more than failure, more than rejection, even more than pain. Because we've wired our identity around being the one who never disappoints. But here's the paradox: you cannot live a fulfilled life and avoid disappointing others. It is not possible. If you live according to your truth, someone will be upset. If you follow your purpose, someone will feel abandoned. If you speak your boundaries, someone will call you selfish. But guess what? That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is not to manage other people's emotions. Your responsibility is to live in integrity with your soul. And when you do that, when you disappoint someone else to stay true to yourself, you are actually giving them a gift. You are showing them what truth looks like. You are modeling authenticity. You are inviting them to do the same. So let's get real. What boundary have you been too afraid to set? What's the conversation you keep avoiding? What's the situation where you keep saying yes when your entire body is screaming no? That's your edge. That's where your power is hiding. And until you claim that edge, you will stay small, no matter how much you meditate, journal, or read self-help books. Because empowerment is not a feeling. It's a practice, a muscle. And that muscle gets stronger every time you say, "This is not okay with me," and you don't apologize for it. But let's not sugarcoat it. It's hard. Saying no for the first time feels like betrayal. It triggers guilt. It shakes the foundation of your identity. You will be tempted to backpedal. You will want to explain, over-explain, soften the blow. But the magic happens when you trust the silence after the no. That silence is sacred. It's the sound of your nervous system recalibrating. It's the sound of your energy returning. It's the sound of your power settling into your bones. And eventually, that silence will speak louder than any apology ever could. Now let's flip the lens. When someone sets a boundary with you, how do you respond? Do you get defensive? Do you take it personally? Or do you honor it? Because the way you respond to others' boundaries is a mirror of how you feel about your own. If you find yourself resenting those who say no to you, it's likely because you haven't given yourself permission to say no to others. So use that as a compass. The more you honor boundaries, yours and others, the more you step into a life of clarity, respect, and peace. And here's the beautiful twist. The stronger your boundaries become, the kinder you can actually be. Because now, your kindness is real. It's not a performance, not a sacrifice, not a transaction. It's a choice. You're no longer giving out of guilt. You're giving from overflow. And that's what people feel. They feel the difference between forced niceness and embodied generosity. One drains, the other heals. So as we close this trilogy, I want to leave you with a vision. Imagine a life where your no is met with respect, where your time is valued, where your relationships are mutual, where your voice is heard, where your kindness is powerful, not performative. That life is not a fantasy. It starts with one sacred boundary, then another, and another, until your entire life becomes a temple of self-respect. And from that temple, you can love deeply, serve boldly, and live fully. No more shrinking, no more apologizing, no more betraying yourself in the name of being nice, because your truth is more valuable than your likability. And your soul was not put here to be agreeable. It was put here to be real. So I leave you with this final question. What truth are you ready to stop hiding behind politeness? Answer that, and your life will begin to change in ways you can't even imagine. This has been the paradox of being nice, how it's actually making you weak. Until next time, live boldly, speak truthfully, and never confuse being liked with being whole. Because the world doesn't need more nice people. It needs more honest ones,